Welcome to Talking Down the Highway, a Beach Boys podcast presented by Strange Currencies Music. I'm Matt.
I'm Glenn.
And I'm Brian.
I'm Tim. Hi.
That was a terrible portrayal.
It was a good impression of the guy who plays him.
Oh my gosh. Tim, stop.
We'll get there. This is the intro. Nobody even knows what this episode's about.
Hey,
yet.
it's a special
Unless
episode. I feel
they read
special.
the title of it.
I feel
no
special.
Way. There's no way for them to know. Why do you feel
It's special-ish.
It's special-ish. Hey, I mean, we're taking a departure. We've been listening to some awesome Beach Boys music, and I don't know, going back through the catalog. But we're spicing it up. We're mixing it up a little bit today.
So my dad is officially a listener now.
Hey,
Was that the Nelson who actually commented on the YouTube?
Maybe.
Something about promoting our royalty-free to us music?
I don't know. I didn't check.
Okay.
I didn't.
I just got an
comments.
email that said that there was a comment. I was like, a comment?
Oh, wow.
At this hour?
That was in this economy.
Yeah.
That was probably him.
Yeah. And the last name was Nelson.
Okay.
So.
nice. Tim's dad's listening.
Well,
That's
I was
great.
Say he has some notes.
Oh, okay. All right.
First of all, the royalty-free music is too loud.
We're getting notes. Hey, treble up.
Hold on. As all that was happening, Glenn just his noise volume just completely totally peaked. So
Nice.
now
So,
your dad will have another note.
point
That Glenn
taken.
guy
And
needs to be way quieter.
And Tim needs to be louder because I can't hear Tim hardly.
Really? See, I can't hear me either, but I thought you guys could hear me.
I hear you fine.
No.
But I'll turn you up a little bit.
Hey,
too.
hey, treble
Make
up.
me the loudest.
Give him.
Hold on, Glenn. You are entirely too loud. So hold on. Let's fix this.
Hey,
on the
who's
fly.
standing at the mixing?
There we go.
Hey.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
It's a gag.
I'm just sitting here talking. Matt's in the control room controlling the levels like
room,
Murray
like
Wilson
Murray.
up there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But I'm wondering if the knobs even work.
Oh, they work.
I'll show you a knob.
I'll give you a knob.
Heyo.
So the other note is that's just in the segments.
Okay, so now
the
Tim
royalty free
sounds better.
music. Yeah, I do.
All right, good.
Let's see what else. Oh yeah, we got to be more clear about the names of the songs, and I agree.
Okay, all right.
Lastly, it's not his note; it's my note. I think we need to cut down on the fucks and the ball sack talk and all that stuff that we're known for.
Oh.
Just
That's your note?
This is your note?
yeah. We're always talking about buttholes and
Or did your dad fine
bodily
you?
fluids.
Did you get fined for all of
That's
those?
right. Yeah,
Maybe that's
it's
what we should do.
$100 for every ball sack.
So you think we need to cut that stuff back?
Fuck yeah.
All right. Oh,
I think it's bullshit and shouldn't fucking be talking like that.
seriously.
It's a family
this is
show.
It's a family show. Yeah, if I want my kid to listen to these.
Too bad.
Well,
Poo poo pee pee.
on that note here, obviously some kids have to be listening because here's the latest numbers. Listener update. 489
Hey.
million listeners.
Oh, million.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Someday it'll be
we've
billion.
been led to believe that that is rounded up to the nearest
scales
million.
up.
So again,
Yeah.
it's probably 488 and change.
It's all
But
the kids.
Hey, that's all right.
It's all the
doing well.
kids.
Yeah.
Kids love us.
Yeah. So we're doing pretty well.
So
Yeah,
we got
I
at
like
least
it.
one fan.
That's great. Hey, Tim's dad. How's it going?
What's weird to me is that we have all these listeners and there's no comments. Hardly ever. Like that I got an email and I was like, what?
Right.
Cool. A comment on one of our YouTube videos?
On the one hand, I'm scared to get comments.
Yeah, I kind of
But
am
on the
too.
other, it's nice to have some engagement so people are actually listening.
Yeah. Well, we know people are listening. One, because we see the numbers. Two, we know that Al Jardine is listening.
course.
That's right.
And we know that Mike Love is listening.
And his lawyers are listening.
His lawyers are listening.
He's
And he's
taking
refusing
notes.
to answer the big two questions that we have of
Right.
him. What brand of dog food is it that you eat?
Yeah, and we need to see that diploma.
And we need to see the full form diploma to prove that you did in fact graduate high school. So
And I don't think summer school classes count.
no,
I think
no. Let's take a quick break.
Yes.
And we'll come back and
Great.
talk about what we're going to talk about. All right, and we are back. What are we talking about this week, Tim?
Stuff. Oh, it's a movie.
A movie?
Yeah, I think it's.
This is a music podcast.
Oh, well, sometimes they make movies about musicians.
Oh, okay.
Biographical movies. Movies are also known as pictures. And when you combine the two, you get a biopic.
I've heard so many people pronounce that as biopic. It's
Biopic.
like, yeah.
They're thinking of myopic.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're
Biopics
wrong.
are one of my favorite genres of
Yeah.
film. I'm a sucker for them.
I am too.
Mine too, but they're usually pretty bad.
Oh, they're always bad.
Well,
That's what's so great about
It
them.
depends. I do have thoughts on that. We should say what this is, though. This is called The Beach Boys, An American Family. It was a TV miniseries, just a
Wait,
two-parter.
the Beach Boys share a colon?
Yeah, this is
Yikes.
all about that one colon that they have to
they
take
are
turns,
close, aren't they?
They have to
Yeah,
take
all
turns
right.
using. So this is a TV miniseries released in the year 2000. Not in the future. I just mean literally the year 2000. In 2 parts over 2 nights. Without commercials, it's a solid 3 hours. But it is on YouTube in a couple different versions. There's really good looking 4K sort of restoration with color correction that some guy put out and combined the 2 parts, so it's just one long thing.
Yeah.
So it's out there. It's very easy to access. So just pause the podcast and come back in 3 hours having watched it.
Yeah.
Starting now. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
we're back.
What did you guys do with your 3 hours?
I built a house.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
did some
I
laundry.
just took a nap, so I
Oh,
really feel like a loser.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about this movie.
All right. Can we address the elephant in the room?
Oh, yeah.
This film was executive produced by John Stamos.
Stamos.
Hey, sounds like it's time for an episode of Heroes and Villains. All right, Heroes and Villains, where we discuss the heroes and the villains, whatever it is we happen to be talking about this week. And this week we are talking about The Beach Boys, An American Family, Part 1. We're only talking about Part 1, by the way. I don't know if
Right.
we established that
Oh,
already.
no, we didn't.
Good job, Tim. Way to fuck that up. All right, well, Glenn just said one of the magic words. It's like Pee-wee's Playhouse in here. You know, if the right word gets said, it just cues up the Heroes and Villains music. And
Yep, yep.
one of those names that just absolutely sets us off. John fucking Stamos.
John Stamos.
Yeah. What did this guy ever contribute to society?
he was Uncle Jesse on Full House.
Question.
He's
All right,
dreamy.
hold on. I want to.
okay.
I'm going to ask something out here of this. You guys, I'm sure both watched Full House growing up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we're all kids of the 80s, 90s, right?
Yeah.
Uncle Jesse, of course. He is Uncle Jesse.
Yes.
Did the kids ever really refer to Joey as Uncle Joey?
I think they did, didn't they?
I don't
No,
think so.
I think it was just Joey and Uncle Jesse.
I would agree with that too. And I know people that are like adamant that he was referred to as Uncle Joey, but no, he wasn't.
okay.
He's some fucking random loser who they were nice enough to let in off the street because, trust me, we've all seen his comedy, the stupid, there's no way that dude was making a living.
Right.
So like, okay, you can live in our fucking basement because we feel bad for you. He was not their uncle, and they
is
didn't
one of those,
refer to him as uncle.
No, I
It's
thought
like a
he was
Mandela
like,
effect thing.
wasn't he like a college buddy or something? I think that was the backstory. Is that he was just like a friend of theirs.
Some rando dude with a fucking
Right.
woodchuck puppet.
Probably a criminal.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Anyway, so a villain for sure of this whole production,
sure.
John Stamos.
So,
and
yeah.
why particularly, other than the fact that we just don't like this guy?
Well,
Well, okay, so knowing that, I think that's critical information to have in the back of your mind because as you watch this, you can kind of start to think, okay, there's maybe some colored lens through which we're watching this because as we know, John Stamos has been a long time buddy of Mike Love.
Yeah.
And so knowing that John Stamos is in there, one, there's a little slickness of this. There's a little bit of like, we're going to make it this cool. Because that's kind of what John Stamos does. He
There's
like,
nothing cool.
well,
Nothing
okay.
cool.
There's
about
an
him or
attempt.
about the movie?
Well, both really, and,
Okay.
and about the Beach Boys too. I mean,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
let's be honest.
That's
here.
true.
Well, I think there's an attempt at polish. There's an
Well, it's
attempt.
definitely polished,
Right. That's
and
my
it's
point.
definitely whitewashed too.
And another part of my point in that a lot of this is, maybe trying to tell the story, trying to, feed the fans what they want. Because I think that's something that's a common element in Mike Love and John Stamos is like, hey, let's make this marketable. Let's find this thing that'll sell,
Sure.
put butts in the seats.
But also, like, Stamos being executive producer is almost like Mike Love is executive producer as far as
Exactly.
like the perspective and like how he's going to
Right.
come across. Yeah.
And so some of that you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and understand that, okay, this is a Mike Love centric story, or which at times it kind of feels like that. It feels like this is his version, his telling of that.
It kind of does. And we're still, again, today only talking about the first part of it. And so I have to, like, for myself, because it's been a few months since I've seen it. I watched it last summer. I mean, I've seen it. I think I saw it when it came out 20-some years ago or whatever. But, yeah, I've got to, like, sort of separate what happens in the first part versus what happens in the second part. Because I think a lot of the things that I think Glenn is getting at, to me, really come out more in part 2 than
Yeah,
part
I would
1.
agree.
I haven't finished part 2 yet, so I don't know if I've gotten to
You're
some
really
of that
just
stuff.
nursing this.
I am nursing it.
You've been watching it in, like,
And
15-second increments.
Yeah.
for
Wow,
Well,
just
and
about
digesting
2
it.
years now.
I
Yeah.
rewatched part 1 half last night, half this morning. So that's like very fresh, and I get the separation distinct in my head. So
Yeah, it pretty much part 1 pretty much goes right up until the airplane breakdown.
Yeah.
When Brian is like, I can't tour anymore.
So villain John Stamos,
Okay.
really,
Well, so since we're talking about production here in this episode of Heroes and Villains, I'm going to throw a curveball here.
Uh-oh.
Because typically you say Pee-wee's Playhouse, there are some names that trigger the villainy. I think the casting here, Kevin Dunn plays Murray Wilson. I think it's the best portrayal of Murray Wilson.
oh god, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, are we allowed to make Murray Wilson a hero?
Well, let's make Kevin Dunn a hero.
Okay.
He's
fair.
the goat in this. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's some really interesting castings here and some really awful castings in here.
Well, and we'll
or
get into that
portrayals.
as a whole here
Right.
soon, but I would agree that maybe Murray's portrayal is the best of
Yeah,
the...
I think so.
And I think, I don't know, the Audrey Wilson, I think, is it Allie Mills?
Allie Mills,
It's the mom from Wonder
From
Years.
Wonder Years, just, the
classic,
classic
TV mom.
Classic mom, yeah. So, yeah, I would say that both of them are pretty well cast and well acted.
I would also say I think Mike Love is spot on
Yeah.
in this. I think the mannerisms, the look, that little tinge of just annoying,
Right.
like I don't know. At one point,
When I watch it, I want to slap him in the face.
Yep.
So,
Yes,
yeah, it's
yes.
perfect. It's pretty.
I think
spot
those.
on.
I think those three.
So
I
some
think,
heroes and
I think those three portrayals are the best.
the ultimate villain,
Murray,
Mike Love.
Audrey.
Yeah.
Mike Love, also the villain, along with Stamos. But the true hero, of course, is Bob Saget.
Oh, how does Bob Saget come in here?
Just because he's on Full House,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
and he's dead. Poor guy.
Fair enough.
Ball sack.
All right.
Paul Saget.
He's like really foul mouthed.
Does the movie mention Murray Wilson's glass eye at all?
Yeah.
It does.
It does. Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if that was.
He says, I lost this eye in a factory accident. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me how to fight. Anyway,
That was the one
let's
thing.
end this episode so we can talk more about the casting and the
Okay.
acting.
Okay.
and
All
stuff.
right. Well, good episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Good episode of Heroes and Villains. Wow, so Kevin Dunn.
Yeah, so
Heroic.
he's great. He was in an episode of Seinfeld where he's
Yeah.
kind of the same character. He's like being a dick to a waitress at Monk's, and Jerry tries to break up with him. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
'Cause he-
Oh, that's right.
He's like,
yeah.
now is this real turkey or is this a turkey roll? She's like, I think it's real turkey. Is there a bird back there?
Wow.
As if there's not, how do you know? And he's like a total dick, and but he's also talking and not listening to Jerry. And Jerry's like, I'm thinking of going to Iran. Hezbollah asked me to play a show, their terrorist gala or something like that. So anyway, but he's been in everything. He's got a huge IMDb.
He's just one of those character actor guys, right?
Sort
You
of
see him around.
overlooked sometimes. You could call him underrated. Like, and this movie,
He's like Brian Dennehy.
yeah. But Kevin Dunn, though, I looked it up. This series was nominated for some Emmys, but he was not, so he got robbed.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I'd say he's the all-star.
Yeah, absolutely. But we talked about the Mike Love guy. Perfect casting. Like, he just looks like him.
Yeah, he does. And even
And
like
you just want to kick him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just want to, like, get on a boat a cruise and then throw him off the top deck.
Just any
into
old
the
cruise.
sea.
Yeah, you know,
doesn't have to be
coincidentally,
a Beach Boys
maybe
cruise, but if it is, hey, why not? And
Mike
while you're
Love
there,
happens to be there.
And while you're there, free the suffragettes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Frederick Weller as Brian. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of it?
Terrible.
Yeah,
It was awful.
Just bad.
Just super
So-
cringy and like.
Yeah,
I
just
agree.
The facial tics.
Right.
Yeah. So bad.
I'll say that like at the very beginning of the movie, and we'll get into the whole like plot in a second. At the very beginning of the movie, when you first see him, when Carl's walking into the music room and Brian's at the piano, just like his physicality, like I immediately knew, oh, that's Brian. And I guess you would know from context also, but like just this kind of like kind of thing.
He does have a little bit of a naivete about him.
Yeah, but he's like, it's just so weird how he's bringing it across.
Yeah,
like
it's so overacted.
yeah. He's like,
it's not good.
He's a space alien the
Yeah.
whole time. I don't know. We can talk more specifically as we go, sort of scene by scene. But yeah, I don't know. I am kind of mixed, but overall, it's like what the heck? He's like the only one in the movie who's like that.
Yeah, he's pretty bad. Yeah, as for the others, I don't like really have a whole lot of thought on like Al and Carl.
Well, the note I have on the Al Jardine actor is that he's too tall.
Okay, yeah, because he's like, hey, never mind.
He's a redhead.
We like Al.
Yeah. And I thought he was Eric Stoltz for like maybe the whole first time I watched this, and it's not. He was in an episode of Star Trek, maybe the Star Trek: The Next Generation, maybe the best episode, one of the best, called Tapestry. Just saying, if you know, you know. Don't need to go into that. But yeah, he's okay. I thought the Carl actor was really good, as far as being like that sort of emotional. I don't know, just kind of
holding
like,
it all together.
Yeah. He didn't look anything like him, but I did like his sort of overall tone or whatever.
Yeah, he's fine.
Dennis is fine.
He's fine.
Nothing special. David.
He figures in a lot more in the second.
Okay,
to me,
okay.
Dennis at least.
Yeah,
but, yeah, David
is
so whiny.
great. I hate you,
good.
Murray. Yeah. Great performance. Yeah. He does have, I mean, initially he has that big grin down, but then he gets...
Because of those teeth, eh?
Exactly, because of the teeth.
Beautiful teeth.
I think that's why Al came back, is because he saw this kid with those fucking chompers. He's like, oh, wow, I'm going to clean them, or something.
And
Anyway.
he just took his job.
Yeah.
Asshole.
Yeah, so that's the casting. I mean, there's other little bits that, we can get into later, like some of the composite characters that exist and things like that. So,
what would we say just kind of about the general vibe, the look? Oh, wait a minute. It sounds like it's time for an episode of Sound and Vision. All right, it's Sound and Vision, where we discuss all things aesthetic using the David Bowie scale. If we really, really like something, Glenn, we call it
Low.
That's right. And if we really, really don't like something, Tim, we call it
Never Let Me Down.
In which David Bowie
Definitely
let us down. David, buddy, really?
He's dead now, too, so.
Come on, David.
Easy.
He can't do anything about it now.
David. And if we're in the middle, we got a middle ground. We call it Let's Dance. David Bowie's okayest album. All right, so visual aesthetic of this film.
For one thing, this is something where there actually is sound and vision going on.
There is, yeah.
It's a film.
It is. I haven't seen a poster for it because it was a
That's
made-for-TV
right.
movie, you know, so they weren't putting posters up.
I wonder if it got a DVD release.
They might have.
Maybe. Anyway.
Well, let's talk about the general visual vibe here.
First of all, I think it does look better than like a TV show. Like the lighting has a little bit of complexity to it, and there's depth in the the framing and stuff like that. But it still has kind of a plasticiness to it, which I think works for it. But I don't know. I think it looks like a step above cheap.
Yeah. Step above.
A step or two.
It's kind of what you'd expect for a made-for-TV
It has a
film
little bit of that
from the late 90s, early
fuzzy
2000s.
soap opera look to it.
A little bit.
Yeah.
There's another biopic, Beach Boys biopic, was Summer Dreams, like in the.
So, yeah, I've got to find that one. I saw it once years and years and years ago.
Yeah, and
I would say that one was
one's-
from the 80s.
That one's super cheap. That's like really bad, like toupees and hairpieces and like
Well, I mean,
beards.
toupees would probably be best advised for one of the members of the Beach
Realistic
Boys.
in a way.
That one's just bad. This one, at least, it is looks like it has some money behind it.
Yeah.
And
It's got some production value.
It's following it, it's easy to follow, and it's got decent
I
narrative.
think I guess this is more specifically sound, but the way they incorporate some of those like demo recordings and like, put them on top of the footage of them like singing in the studio actually works pretty well.
Yeah, that's one of the things about a lot of biopics is oftentimes they'll re-record a musician's biopic with the actor singing.
I like that they didn't even bother to try.
right.
Because honestly, it sounds so much better to use the real stuff in this case. But like even that scene where he's at Marilyn's house playing. Is it Surfer Girl? He's singing something at the piano.
In my room.
In my room. And it's Brian singing, and it's it sounds really good. I mean, because he doesn't, he does sing that song, I'm sorry. But it's clearly like an early sort of recording of it where he's like trying it out, and it works perfectly in that scene.
Yeah,
So,
I think visually, I always look for stuff like in biopics and things like that for what kind of guitars are they using,
Right.
and the studio shots.
Does a pretty good job with the gear.
Does. The white Fenders, as we talked about in the last episode on the cover of Beach Boys concert. And,
the upright bass, just being an upright bass.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I don't necessarily know like all the early guitars they use. Like David Marks is playing a Silvertone, and he has that case with the speaker with the amp built in. I noticed that right away, which is cool. I mean, you only see the
Can I
case,
play
but then
with you
later,
guys?
but then later you see he is playing the guitar that goes with that case. That's accurate.
Yeah.
Brian at some point gets the P bass with the pickup guard, whatever.
Yep.
And there's a
Such
Jaguar
nerds.
in there.
Because they're such nerds.
Yeah. But no, those are cool little details. Like there, I noticed
Classic white Fenders.
a lot of details in the movie suggested
are
that
a lot,
was well researched.
Yep.
But then obviously there were some creative decisions made.
Well, even just a lot of the look of like the scenes where they're recording with the wrecking crew and stuff. I mean, the stuff is all period appropriate, and it doesn't look like we're just
Production design is solid. Yeah.
It is. It's pretty good in that regard. It's time to give it a rating though.
Gosh, I mean it's.
Well, I mean, Summer Dreams never let me down, so I think this has to be a little bit better than that.
Right.
So, I'll go Let's Dance.
I'll go Let's Dance just because like I feel like low is too high.
Oh yeah.
But Let's Dance feels too low, so I don't know. A strong Let's Dance.
Well, and maybe here's another comp. I mean, Love and Mercy is kind of in a similar
We're not
arena.
talk about that.
I'm just
that's
saying,
a big budget, Hollywood production.
Well, but that's my point. Is if you're looking at sound and vision, maybe Love and Mercy is more
the ideal.
Is more of a
okay.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen it. We'll definitely do an episode about that too.
Sure.
But, I'm comfortable saying it's a pretty strong Let's Dance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've acknowledged that there's sort of different levels within our three, and this is a solid Let's Dance.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially considering in context, made for TV film, late 90s, early 2000s. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Good episode.
Good episode.
All
Solid.
right, anything else we need to talk about, just like terms of general background and setup here?
Well, I just think that the whole Stamos is a part of this. There's probably some because of that, there's lots of Mike Love input, I'm sure, because they're buddies and friends. So as much as we kind of give Mike a hard time, Mike was there, and there is a lot of like name drops and little trivia tidbits that super fans will appreciate, because there's a bunch of little references.
I agree.
Kind of dived in, even though most of them are done really poorly or ham-fisted, but they're there.
Yeah, and there's some direct quotes from real life too. Said by some characters,
and it's kind of cool. Like as they're doing surfing, and Brian's tapping the snare with his finger. And so it's like there's a lot of like little subtle things that you'll get, which I appreciate. But I will say though, as much as Mike gave input onto details and accuracy or whatever, Brian wasn't a huge fan of this.
Yeah.
Did you guys see Brian's?
I just saw the little comment in the Wikipedia article about him saying it wasn't. He didn't like it. He didn't like the guy who played him. It was too. He said he was too rough or something like that.
Well, it's harsher than that.
Okay.
It's. I didn't like it. I thought it was in poor taste, and it stunk.
Oh, that's right.
I thought it stunk. Yeah.
And then he has a comment about part 2 and Charles Manson, but we haven't gotten there yet. So.
Yeah. So and I mean. Yeah, he said it wasn't really true to the way things were. He said he didn't like the second part. He didn't say he liked the first part. He just said he especially didn't like. So we'll talk about that next time.
Okay.
But, Yeah, I mean, there's certain things in here. It's kind of fun to go and see the timeline. Not everything's completely accurate,
Right.
but I think this is probably a good, if you're interested in learning the backstory of
Right.
the Beach Boys, is probably a good place to start.
Yeah, it's like a good setup. I
Yeah,
think.
and there's also enough kind of like cool trivia tidbits
Mm-hmm.
that will be there for super fans
Right.
too.
That's true.
And it's kind of handy because, as we sort of already alluded to, there's not a ton of footage of them like playing live. And
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about last week, some of the videos out there on YouTube of the performances, but it's a relatively short amount of things.
Yeah.
Like once you get into the Pet Sounds Good Vibrations Smile era, there's a little bit more like studio footage and things like that, but they're not anywhere near as documented, of course, like the Beatles. Like early
Yeah.
Beatles, there's just footage upon footage upon,
Everywhere, right.
all of that stuff. And this at least provides a little bit more, I don't know, just sort of a visual for the music that we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
Where that actual real record is, I mean, it's there, but it's not as,
Right.
detailed as what we have with, say, the Beatles.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a quick break if you guys don't have anything else here in the intro part, and we'll come back and just start talking about the sequence,
Yeah.
the scenes of the film. All right. Well, let's do that. We'll be right back.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Beach Boys :
I think it's called the Beach Boys Family and American Colon.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, well, let's walk through it. Like, okay, favorite scenes. Like, what were?
Well,
what are
let's go in order. So I have some notes. We can just kind of zip through the plot itself, and then we can pop
Sure,
in
sure,
with like
sure.
our
Right
favorite
off the bat,
scenes. So,
first
like,
scene. Go ahead.
right
please,
off the
Tim,
bat,
'cause
first
this is my least
scene.
favorite of the whole thing.
Right. So you see Carl and David coming home. Like David's on a skateboard. Oh, let me play with you. Or he says, "Come over and jam later," or something like that. Whatever. I do like they have a little like a vocal only version of "Wouldn't It Be Nice" playing,
Oh, yeah.
and it's kind of like just this dreamy sort of intro. Of, it kind of fades in and out.
Suburban,
Right.
idyllic.
Yeah, exactly. And Carl
that's
goes into the house and he sees Brian and his parents. They're doing the two-step, one side step, whatever the fuck. And they talk about, Brian's got a bed in here. Brian's like, let me move in to the music room. And, whatever. That's just establishing things. Denny's established immediately as a rebel.
Oh, yeah.
Because Murray's yelling at him, "Hey, Dennis, get in here." And Dennis just basically steals Murray's car and goes surfing with...
So I would like to
Yeah.
I would like to say that that was one of the highlights for me. I'd never really heard two-step side step.
That's a highlight.
Well, I mean, it was kind of fun to be able to reframe like Murray's like, yeah, I'm successful, and so like it's him
Generational divide.
living his glory days
Is
and
that
playing
like-
this song.
Was that a whole album? Was that a record?
It was just it was a
single.
single
Okay.
that he wrote, and like
Did he perform it?
no,
Okay.
that's
Wrote
not
it.
him. He wrote it. But like I went and started looking it up because you can always find that we've mentioned the many moods of Murray Wilson.
Yeah, which is-
but like two-step sidestep was kind of one of the first ones that he wrote much earlier than that, and was out in like 1953. And so there was a country artist, Johnny Lee Wills, who had done it, and that's the version that they're playing in the
okay.
film. There's also another, you can find it, Bonnie Lou is another country rockabilly artist in
Right.
1953
So
recorded it.
that's one of those kind of nuggets that's like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it was fun, like, there's another scene later
That wasn't
where...
our Nuggets.
There's another scene later...
Lenny K.
Hey, stop interrupting me, freaking Matt! You're
Did
talking
you
all over
consider
me!
two-step side step for Nuggets?
There's like another scene where Murray's watching Lawrence Welk, and he's like waiting for his song to come on to see if
Like, I don't think Lawrence Welk's going to play your song tonight. It's like, you got to keep your eye on him because sometimes they'll play your song and they won't pay you.
And so,
I like that this version of Murray is clearly from Chicago. I don't know if that's the case. Anyway.
well, but I like that you get that reminder that Murray is
Right. Yeah, it is.
this-
Well, the whole Murray arc is really interesting to me, and I'll get more into that. Like, Anyway, so there's that. We get some establishment of Murray. The next scene is the first like kind of egregious Mike Love.
And this is the one that I was thinking of.
Being given more credit than he
Yes.
actually deserves. Because like in reality, Dennis was the surfer. I think he is the one, or like he's the one that suggested they do surf rock, whatever, and that is kind of in the movie. But this first scene, he goes to the gas station, says, "Hey, Mike, come surfing with me." And Mike's like, "Okay," because I obviously surf. I have a surfboard right here in the office. And then they go surfing.
False.
There is an instance of some of the lingo that we've learned and we talked about on the show.
Ho daddies?
Well, later, but here.
No, there are gremlins.
Well, yeah, he says not bad for a Grammy.
Right.
One of them says that, and like, I'm not a Grammy. So there's that, whatever, and they get with these two chicks at the beach.
Because the chicks just cannot resist.
Of course,
gas station attendant.
Exactly.
Maybe possibly high school graduate, balding at the age of 21. Michael,
breath like dog food.
Yeah, exactly. They just can't resist.
Well, but the interesting thing, one thing that I noticed about the Mike Love characterization is that he's doing things that he never did. He's getting more credited for being more involved than he was. But he's also being portrayed as a womanizer, kind of, and like as a cheater. Because Dennis says something about, "Don't you already have a girlfriend?" He's like, "There's no law against having more than one." So like they give him that stuff, but my thought is that stuff is
He's
quote
such
unquote
a scoundrel.
It's quote unquote cool. It's like socially acceptable to be kind of a man slut and like whatever. So like it still makes him look like
That was one of the things in Mike Love's autobiography is that he was like, yeah, my biggest weakness is the ladies.
Yeah, okay.
And it's like
so
he's trying to make that narrative
right in line with
he's
what he would want you to think about him. So anyway, there's that. And then we see Al Jardine when Brian's fiance is about to break up with him. Brian sees Al and he pretends to throw up a milkshake. Classic comedy.
Classic. It's such a Brian.
Al is portrayed as a jock, which I guess he was. I mean, he was on the football team.
Well, but Brian was the quarterback.
Yeah, so it's, I don't know. Maybe the lines were blurry back then.
See, I don't know. I feel like the whole milkshake puke scene felt a little disparaging. Like, you always hear that Brian was the jokester, or he was like pranky. Was pranking. It felt like that's what they were trying to communicate about his character here.
I think it was to illustrate that he wasn't really, he's not paying a lot of attention to what his girlfriend wants or whatever, Like he didn't have any idea that she didn't want to get married. He gets the ring and he's like, "Oh my God, really?" I don't know. That's what I took away from that scene, because like she was about to say that and then he's like, "Oh, it's my old buddy Al," just kind of like pushing her to the side. It kind of foreshadows how he's kind of a shitty husband later, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is. I think this was a terrible portrayal, and he comes off looking like Brian comes off looking like an idiot, like a buffoon here. And I wouldn't be surprised if like the only reference material they have is Mike Love trying to tell this actor, here's what you should do. Brian was always a jokester, and
no, that's a good point. Like. He I don't know. There are levels here. Like he is this kind of like empty-headed weirdo seemingly, but then when it gets later and he kind of stands up to Murray, that kind of makes that arc a little bit more satisfying, I guess. Or I don't know. That's
all right. Well, here's a question I have for you guys. Is there's some like questionable like timeline arcs here, and that's what happens in this scene here. Is they kind of cram this arc of Surfer Girl in, and
that's right.
I just want basically
and it's kind of a hanging thread too.
Yeah, according to the scene, it's like he's engaged, and then is he engaged, or is that just like a pin?
Oh no, it was like a diamond ring.
He was engaged, right? And so he gets dumped, but then they wrap it all in like he's on his way home, and he listens and he hears "When You Wish Upon a Star."
Right.
And then he goes immediately home and writes Surfer Girl. But wasn't he like 16? Wasn't Surfer Girl like the very first song he ever wrote?
Right.
Like when he was like 16?
That's what he says,
Yeah, I think the movie's trying to portray it as the first song he ever wrote because it's the first song we see him writing.
But he's engaged.
Right. Yeah,
so
I think the timeline is fuzzy there, but there's those nuggets
Brian
of
really
reality.
when he got first engaged?
I don't know, but I mean, he was like 20 when the group started, so it would have been right around then, and I guess I don't really know. But this is like where the truth is sort of woven in with the fiction, I think. Because When You Wish Upon the Star was apparently like kind of his inspiration for that song. So.
Right. And so they kind of lumped all those into one scene to knock out all of those little, things.
It's a handy device.
Right. So there's this family Christmas party at Brian's sister's house. Murray's sister's house. Sorry. Yeah. So Brian's aunt and uncle. It's Mike Love's mom's house.
Right.
And Al's not there. They need to do this harmony. That's when they bring in Dennis because Brian promised his mom that Dennis would be involved, and then Dennis does some harmonies, and that's what convinces Murray to, just the next day or whatever. He's like, you know what? I know some people. I should go to the recording studio, but I want to talk about the Christmas party scene because we talked about Murray establishing his sort of past where he's hung up on this like minor success he had years ago, and now you see his dad.
Dude.
And that scene with his dad, he says like 2 sentences, and it's just
awful.
Chilling.
Yeah.
Because, well, first of all, the guy who plays his dad, did you notice who that was? Old Private Ryan.
What?
The only thing I've seen him in is his face morphing into an old man and weeping at a tombstone.
Okay.
And, it seems like a nice old man. And then here... like he's facing away from the camera. Murray's talking to his mom, and she's like,
around,
and what's his name? Like Woody or something like that? I don't know. But she says, oh, what about this? And then he turns around, he pats his stomach, which I think
Murray's
is just
chunky.
Yeah, I think it's just a wordless way of saying Murray's getting
weight.
fat. And then the only thing he says to him is, well, your sister's certainly doing well for herself or something like that. She's got a nice house. At least one of you's doing something with their lives. Oh. And then the mom says, Murray, or says, whatever your name is, it's Christmas. And he just turns to her and says, is anybody talking to you? And that's like the whole scene, and it just explains so much about Murray.
Right.
So that's a favorite scene for me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think that was one of the things this film reminded me of Murray's past, and then and also that whole Murray glass eye anecdote. I totally forgot.
Oh yeah, we've got to mention that. He says that at the dinner table. Oh, I already explained that. Yeah.
Which is kind of like I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. Like, I think that maybe makes him all the more horrifying. Like, can you imagine him like being all abusive and looking into his dead eye?
Yeah.
I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah. We can actually skip that whole dinner scene. He's like beating Dennis in his bedroom while the rest of the family is sitting at the dinner table waiting for them.
Right.
And then, so like this is establishing Murray. Like we have these little sympathetic touches, but then it's like, oh, this guy's also a monster. And then after that, they come out of the bedroom, and Dennis is like putting his pants back on because he just got spanked. And then immediately there's a reference to Murray hitting Brian with a 2x4, whatever it was, and costing him his hearing in one ear.
And Murray like defending it. He's like, oh, you had it coming.
I smacked you a little bit because you were being a shit. I don't know what he said, but yeah. So yeah, we've got to establish that. I skipped that part, but then
that's all right. We don't have to cover every scene.
Exactly.
Because we're already 40 minutes in.
Yeah, but yeah, some of these things are important. So okay, so after the Christmas party, Murray says, "Hey, go to this recording studio. Maybe you guys could record something, whatever." I don't know what song they're doing in the recording studio. At some point they do. That's later.
Before they did that, they did a Four Freshmen song.
Well, they do graduation day. I feel like in the garage. Anyway, they go to a recording studio, and there's people. The people who work there are like, you need to come up with something original. And this is another scene what gives Mike more credit than he deserves, because Dennis does speak up and says, well, what about surfing? That's what all the kids are doing. And Mike's like, yeah, because I'm a surfer too. I agree. And he starts throwing out some of that terminology, the daddies, and they do the surf reports on the radio. And then that scene also portrays Brian as being like almost violently opposed to the idea of doing surf rock, which that's probably not true either. I don't know. Yeah. But there's this part after they leave the recording studio and they're still trying to convince him to do surf rock, where he's like, that's not my sound, man. And at one point he stops talking, but he keeps moving his head around like a bird. Right. It's really weird.
It is bad.
And that's when Mike pulls him aside and tells him he knocked the lady up. So we got to do this because I got a kid now.
Yeah.
It
classic Mike Love.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does do a lot of Mike Love apologetics here, like defending him, like they needed him to be practical and to push, and
which I think he did some of that stuff, but again, like because maybe he was desperate for the money or whatever. But as far as making him more of a sympathetic character, like, he knocks a girl up, but then he says, "Oh, my mom's never going to find out." Cut to his family, basically kicking him out of the house and telling him, "You're going to marry that girl." So, Mike's on hard times, I guess.
Yeah, and they don't.
But he's about to pull himself up by the bootstraps because that's what a good Republican does.
Well, and they even did the little drop about how when they were doing the scene of them shooting Surf and Safari, the cover, they were talking about how like our people were sleeping on the beach when they first came to California.
Right.
We came from nothing.
Murray's saying that, right?
Right. And okay, whatever. But the Loves like have this mansion that they live in, and Mike's.
Well, now that is true. Like I've actually read, and I don't remember what the biography is, but it gets into like the real history of the 2 generations prior. Who did come out like around the time of the Dust Bowl to California, and they did literally sleep on the.
They did.
Like, they were like.
They did, and Mike Love makes a very fine point to point that out, but he also kind of glosses over the fact that they lived in this mansion all through his childhood and growing up, and like
because his dad had like a steel company or something like that.
Like Love Steel, like they were, and so they were like wealthy. And there's even a mention of it, like when they go over for the Christmas party. Murray has always felt like they're the poor relatives because Love Steel is like throwing these extravagant parties and.
I think this skips ahead in the plot, but going back to that scene where they recreate the Surf and Safari shoot, pretty accurate. Like I think they go to the same spot. They've got the same car and the same outfits and the same surfboard and everything like that. That was a cool little sequence.
That was kind of fun to see.
But yeah, so after all this, Mike Love, whatever. I don't remember what comes next, but at some point they become the Beach Boys.
Yeah, because the guy didn't like the Pendletons, so
right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. So
the
they
guy
go
just
in.
writes it on the
that's
thing.
What it is. So they at this point they write Surfin'. And they go record that, and they're like, okay, now this is what we're talking about. And then he's like, but that fucking name sucks. So he writes the Beach Boys on there, and they ship it. And then they hear themselves on the radio.
And everybody in town's listening to it.
They all listen to the same station, obviously, in all their cars. And they go, just like American Graffiti. And he goes, I think Dennis goes and turns up other people's stereos.
Oh, yeah, that was the best
Kisses
scene.
other people's girls.
Yep.
Yeah. They're all...
Scoundrels. All right, well, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about a little bit more of the film.
We're back, and we're talking faster. We're going in broad strokes. So, because this movie's, it's only 90 minutes, whatever. So, what just happened is they just recorded a hit single, and they just got $1,000, $900 or whatever, and they split it. And then Al Jardine quits for some reason and goes to dental school. David comes in, but then they start playing shows.
And then they're shopping to Capitol.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah, they're shopping to Capitol. So Nick Vinay is there.
And that's where Murray really kind of does the whole, there's that sort of that foreshadowing of I'll do the talking, I'll do the,
right.
I know how these people work. Kind
and
of
he
thing.
sets up the Sea of Tunes.
And I want to say now, again, it's been a
Publishing.
couple months since I've seen it, but doesn't Mike like act super hesitant about turning control over to Murray at that point?
Right.
But Brian's just naive, and he's like, "Oh no, my dad can handle it. He knows how this."
Murray's very manipulative, and
But
keep
Mike
the money.
had
The money stays in the
foresight.
family.
He knew,
of course, yeah. But he's also being like kind of scammed or whatever, like just like the lawsuit. Yeah. He's being his what's due to him is being taken away by others. Whatever. So that happens. They start. They play concerts. Sorry, now that I'm not looking at my notes, I'm getting all.
That's all right.
Lost.
No, they get into some trouble here and there, right? I mean, you get the whole. Isn't there the scene where like Dennis runs away from the group for a while, like they're out camping or something like that?
Yeah, they're like
and he comes
camping on the
back,
road.
and Murray's like beating the hell out of him again.
Well, yeah. So this is like they established that Murray's going to start fining them if they swear, or canoodle or anything like that. And now there's fraternize. There's this one scene where I think Murray is staying in the Airstream trailer,
right,
and the other kids are just like sleeping on cots outside.
Right,
I assume they're on some kind of tour or something. And then Murray's pacing because Dennis isn't back yet. And then Dennis comes with a girl, like a girl drops him off, and then Murray slaps him a couple times, and then Dennis tackles him and punches him. It's a great scene.
Yeah.
And then Murray's like, "Oh, it's fine. I'm taking all your money from the tour," but he kind of looks sad.
Yeah. Poor Murray.
Yeah. At some point, I forget which show it is. I think it's the show where Brian has a little breakdown when they're doing a little deuce coupe, and then afterward, when they're unloading, this is when David gets fired.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene.
Yeah, because he's like Murray's just out to get him anyway. Al is back at this point, so they have an extra guitar player. But yeah, Murray's like, "You're supposed to carry your own amplifier, kid." And he's like, "It's too heavy."
It's too heavy. I hate you, Murray.
He's like, "Why don't you just quit?" Oh, you'd love it if I quit.
Is him replying?
I hate you, Murray.
Right,
Him
right.
mocking him. Right.
He says, "Right, I quit. I hate you, Murray." Murray mocks him, and he's so happy. He's so happy to be rid of David. For some reason, he hates that kid. So now,
Neighborhood boy.
Neighborhood boy.
Yeah. He just gets dismissed like that.
he just runs out crying.
Yeah.
So now it's the classic lineup. At one point they play a show at a little club, and they take a break, and Brian meets Marilyn and her sister and cousin, the Honeys.
Yep.
They
weren't really already a group.
They weren't. Yeah. So this
So that
is
was kind of a false
some
timeline.
fuzzy stuff going on here, but I do like that he goes home with the
included
sisters.
those, yeah.
And then writes, just spontaneously writes in my room and their living room.
Well, but I love the juxtaposition between those girls' parents and Murray.
Yeah.
And, like, not necessarily like Brian's mom is fine, but like you got these people. It looks like they've gotten woken up by their daughter coming home, but they're all happy. Like, "Oh, it's our daughter that we love, and you brought a boy home. This is great. We're gonna
Beach Boy.
We're gonna cook you some food."
You look like a hungry boy. Let me.
Yeah.
Let's fatten him up a bit.
Fatten him up.
And it makes sense because
That's some bad foreshadowing.
Yeah.
oh yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, and then later on, like they
You need to
really
take a nap. You can stay in bed for a decade. Man.
oh god. But yeah, later on, the mom is like, they literally welcome him into their home. She's like, "You can stay in the girls' room."
Right.
Which is like, come on. But then she says, "Well, would you rather have it happen there or in the back of a car?" When the dad is like, "What are you doing?"
But at this point, like in reality, Brian's 20 and Marilyn's 14.
Oh god, really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
So like that's the other thing. Like here, if you step back for a minute, like apparently the whole interaction between Brian and Marilyn when they first met, the whole spilling the "Can I have a sip of your hot chocolate?" apparently is like how it actually went down.
Well, and
but
that's
the
how the
acting's so
spilled your
terrible.
Coke spilled Coke on your blouse from all summer long. I think that's where that comes from, right? Yeah.
Well, but Marilyn always that's how she tells the story of how they met. Is that he
Maybe
asked
sip your
to
hot
have a
chocolate?
sip, and then he promptly spills it on her.
That's a good little moment in the movie because it's so
Yeah, I love
awkward.
that. That was one of my
He
favorite
can't think of
scenes.
anything to say, so he's like, "Ugh."
Yeah, my favorite scenes are that one, like the spilling the chocolate and the parents like, "Oh, let's feed him, embrace him," and then of course David Marks telling off Murray. I also love when they're at the hop and Dennis just starts kissing random girls.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
So in this part of the movie, there's a scene with Brian and Marilyn in the car together. Same setup as when his other girlfriend dumped him. And he says the line, he feels most inspired. I feel most inspired when I'm feeling inferior, which is something we talked about in a previous episode.
Yeah. Interesting.
Like that's when like when he sees the Beatles and all these other things happening, like that's when he kind of steps up. The Beatles are introduced around this time too in the movie. They see them on TV arriving at the airport and doing their little, press conference. And it's just like, it's real footage, but like it really sort of shows how much charisma they have and just natural likability and how they're really a threat to the Beach Boys. And Brian is almost like ready to give up, it seems like, at that point. Murray brings a cardboard cutout into Capitol of the Beatles because they're label mates. And he's like, because it's some sort of promotion where like buy the Beatles out record and get, or like there's a Beach Boys song on the other side or something like that. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Nick Vinay hides under the desk. And he doesn't say anything, and Murray's just like, "I know you're in here, Nick. What's up? You think you can attach our boys to these British assholes?" One of those tiny little details, by the way, that I think shows like the research that went into this movie is that I noticed that Nick Vinay's nameplate is spelled N-I-K, which is accurate. Like if you look him up on Wikipedia, it's N-I-C-K, but it does say that at some point he changed his name to N-I-K in honor of his like grandfather or something like that.
Right.
So anyway, I thought it was a mistake. It wasn't.
Nice.
Oh, what else? Let's see. Oh, they fire Murray.
That was my other favorite scene. It's
Now, and that's when they're recording I Get Around.
I Get Around, yeah.
yeah.
And was that accurate? Is that when they actually...
I'm not sure.
I know we talked
There's
about
actually,
both of those things
you're
on
right.
one of the recent episodes.
There's
and-
different versions of the story. There's
Okay,
like someone, I think Mike may have said that Brian like put Murray against a wall or punched him or something like that, but Brian doesn't say that. There's one real life quote though in the scene where Brian says, "We like to record in an atmosphere of calmness, and you're not presenting that." Dennis is shown as being a real hothead like several times in the movie. He like headbutts the microphone, like, "Get him out of here, Brian, or I'm going to hurt somebody."
Yeah.
And they have to hold him back when Murray shows up. But yeah, that comes to a head, and that's the scene where Brian is like,
You're so old fashioned.
yeah, but he
Get out, Dad. You're fired.
like Murray just like forces him to like stand up for himself and
make
like
a statement.
You don't have any guts.
yeah, that's the guts line. Murray's fired. Murray is so sad. After this is the scene where he goes home, he's drunk, and he puts on Two-Step Sidestep on the record player and just kind of sits
Which
on the table.
most of us have done in our darkest hours.
Of course. And he's just kind of like muttering to himself, and his wife is looking on, but there's no real dialogue, and it's just like, oh, poor Murray. Like I sympathize much more with this fictional Murray than the real Murray.
Right.
He seems like a good guy.
Yeah, Kevin. Let's just call him Kevin. What else? Murray's fired. Sad Murray. Murray skips the wedding. Brian gets married to Marilyn.
So how old would Marilyn have been? I don't know
I
if I
don't
want
know.
to necessarily dig all this up.
I know. I didn't know this about the age difference.
Yeah, that's... I'm not liking this.
Well, speaking of strange realities, there is a fiction in here, blatant fiction, in addition to the fact that Mike does not surf.
Yeah.
And that was all BS. There's the scene where they're playing the carnival or something like that, and they're on stage, and Mike takes his wedding ring off on stage.
It's a drive-in.
And then he does a hand jive.
Yeah,
and all the girls freak out and storm the stage, and they bombard him with kisses. That's false. That there's no way that Mike Love was stormed stage and kisses.
After doing those stupid dances.
After doing that dance. That dance is like some aphrodisiac. Come on.
I'm glad you mentioned this scene, though, because something I noticed about this scene is before that point, they're playing Shutdown. And it gets to the point in the song, like you see them singing on stage, then the camera goes up and over to show like Murray and Audrey in the audience, and Murray's like trying to get them to smile and stuff.
And he's passing out buttons.
But in the background, so the music kind of fades away a little bit in the background, but it's the part of the song where the saxophone would have come in, but there is no saxophone. And he doesn't have a saxophone. It's like they're trying to erase the idea of Mike ever playing the saxophone from existence. I thought that was a cool little detail. Like that's smacked of Mike Love's influence right there.
Oh, that's funny.
So there's a scene where "Don't Worry, Baby" is playing in the studio. No one is shown playing it. Or
Yeah, and I like that.
I do too, but it implies that the Wrecking Crew was involved in the recording of that song, which they weren't.
Okay.
But it was just kind of like a mood setter, I think, for that scene. Because Brian's sad. Marilyn now is more involved. She's like telling Nick, like, "What the hell, man? Give this guy a break. Isn't that enough hit singles for you?"
Right.
And they do show them recording the superior version of Be True to Your School.
I was going to recommend that the viewer skip that
cheerleaders.
scene.
Yeah.
See, that was just Brian trying to give his wife something to do. I don't know.
Okay.
That bad version. Skip it.
Well, hey, there's also the Jan and Dean scene when Brian goes into the studio
Gave
with
a
Jan and
number
Dean.
one record.
That's a great.
Well, I thought it was kind of nice, dumb. The way they tried to cram in all the things, like they're like, hey, you want to meet
Phil Spector?
Phil Spector's here, the Wrecking Crew, and Brian's
Right,
I want to meet him. And they're like, you want to meet that jerk? And I was like, okay, foreshadowing.
The guy who's gonna kill.
the guy who's a murderer.
And also like the Wrecking Crew, they weren't called that at that point.
Right.
Things like that. But I do like how Spector is portrayed here. Like he's just this quiet weirdo. He like turns around and says, "I've heard your stuff," and then turns right back.
That's it.
And he's like just using these like hand signals with the engineer,
like
and
he's
he's like,
some
"Oh, he wants to go back 8
right.
measures." He's got this air of mystery or whatever. But it's accurate that Brian was like already aware of him,
Right.
already aware of Jan and Dean. Obviously, he wrote Surf City, and it did become a #1 hit. And of course, Nick at Capitol is mad about that. And once they get the room to themselves, Murray is mad about that.
Right.
It's like because the Beach Boys hadn't had a number one hit at that point.
I also like the other little drop when Brian has that kind of freak out on stage. They're doing shut down or whatever, and he freaks out, and Carl jumps in and steps onto his mic, which kind of foreshaddws that idea that Carl steps in and becomes the leader in Brian's absence.
I need to read more about the real Carl Wilson because I think he might be one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
I think I might have to rank him above Dennis. He just seems like
We're not redoing the whole.
I know.
No,
Dennis.
He just seems like a good-hearted guy.
He is a good-hearted guy.
Yeah. Anyway,
but Dennis is, come on. Whatever.
So that now is where we kind of get into the influence of the hip, session musicians on Brian.
Yeah.
And some of the composite characters, like some of the girlfriends, wives, whatever, composite characters of real people. But then you got this guy who goes by Tom, characters Tommy Schaefer, apparently Tony Asher, and a couple other figures from reality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are what make up him. The actor, Clay Wilcox, played Bernard Renault in Twin Peaks.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I recognized him, but I didn't know who he was supposed to be. I thought maybe he was Tommy Tedesco or something like that.
Yeah.
He takes him to meet Van Dyke Parks.
Who's not Van Dyke
Who's
Parks?
not Van Dyke,
Who is not Van Dyke Parks.
It's Anthony Rapp, who's been in a bunch of stuff. He's the one that brought down Kevin Spacey, sort of. He was in Dazed and Confused. But yeah, like you'll find listings, like you'll find stuff on the internet of him actually being credited as Van Dyke Parks.
Right.
And I read something where like in subsequent airings, which I don't know if this is true, because they're going to air this again, maybe, that they changed it, because his name is Samuel Pierce.
Yeah, and they you could hear it was like a little voiceover. It's almost like they re-recorded voiceover of the name.
There's one scene in part 2 where he's Van Dyke Parks is essentially quitting, and Brian says Sam. He says Sam, and like you can see his mouth. So I don't know what happened there, but they had to change his name.
Well, I heard Van Dyke Parks threatened to sue for his portrayal. Like he did not,
because it's very obvious, like the voice.
Right. Well, and this was another thing. Like he gives his little introductory, the character does, and I didn't realize.
Is that all true? He was on Heidi and stuff.
He was on Heidi.
Okay.
He was a child actor and played clarinet and all these.
I thought though, like this is probably more Mike Love influence, that he was not portrayed in a good light, you know?
Absolutely.
I mean, these guys, these
are
the guys that corrupted Brian, and arrogant,
pretentious,
and like with bad ideas, or like,
and we'll get more into that in part 2.
Definitely,
Right.
But that's
it's
interesting.
definitely a negative portrayal of the quote unquote Van Dyke Parks.
Yeah.
Right. Brian does drugs.
Then we get on the airplane, the freak out, and Brian has this idea that he just can't be on the road anymore.
Right.
If this is going to continue, I got to be in the studio.
He
and
goes
then
to see his mom,
and then
the
Mike
empty house.
pushes back a tear.
Yeah.
And the
There's
close-up goes in.
What are we gonna do? And then it
To be
freezes on Mike
continued.
Love.
Well,
who,
that's
of
the
course,
most
It's gonna be the
egregious-
savior.
Yes, he's going to figure it out.
It's so perfect. It's the most egregious Mike Love moment where like he's literally crying.
Yes.
Like Brian is an asshole in that
Right.
scene. He's not
Oh
like,
my gosh.
come on guys, I'm having a real hard time. He's like, fuck you guys, do
Yeah,
your
right.
job and I'll do mine. I'm
your
not
job."
going on stage anymore. And he drives off, and Mike's crying and
poor
wiping away
Mike.
tears.
Right.
It's
Poor
great.
Mike trying to put it together.
And that's the end of part 1. That's
Yeah.
roll credits right there.
All right. Well, hey, let's take one quick break here, and we'll come back and wrap it all up. All right, we're back for a quick wrap up.
Yes,
here.
we are. Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Tim. We got a lot more still to talk about with this movie, and we'll be back to talk about this movie in a couple of months. We figured this was just a good time to cover the first half of it, because that's where we're at with the chronology. Brian has just left the touring aspect of the group and is now going to focus on the studio, and so it seemed like a good time now to talk about this. Anyway, we'll be back in a couple months. Talk about part 2 of it, but in the meantime,
we'll be back
next
before that.
week for some talk about the Beach Boys Christmas album. Don't forget to check us out, Talkin' Beach Boys and Strange Currencies Music on Instagram and at strangecurrenciesmusic.com, where you can find our Beach Boys catalog crawl and a whole lot of other great content as well, too. We'll catch you next week.
Yes, let's go. Christmas time.
Yeah, well, until then, I'm Matt.
I'm Glenn.
And I'm crying because Brian left the band.
Oh, bye, Tim.